James.
I want to ask you just maybe a double-barreled question, if I may, Colonel. First of all, is there now finally, after the last 20, 25 years of Western foreign policy seems to have been a record through the Arab Spring and so many other instances of saying, hey, we've replaced somebody bad and winding up with somebody worse. Are we going to start to have some sort of more realistic look at the way we look at totalitarian regimes in this part of the world? And how does Donald Trump's actions with the Houthis relate to all of this? I think it's a very good move that he's done this, but in a sense, I almost wonder what took him so long.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's actually had quite a lot on his plate in various other, but nevertheless, it's long overdue. The attacks that we saw tonight, or whatever time it is in Australia, but tonight in Middle East time, attacks, quite severe attacks by US airstrikes, including drones, I believe, against the Houthis. And my understanding is that their target was against the Houthi leadership. They were trying to take out as many of the leaders as they could in this particular strike, which I believe is going to keep going on. But it's long overdue. It's not only overdue in the Trump administration, but it's been overdue ever since October 2023, when this campaign by the Houthis began against shipping in the Red Sea. And of course, President Biden, as he was in the United States, basically was soft on it because he was trying to appease their masters, the Houthis' masters in Tehran, trying to appease them. And so there's been this, very weak approach to totalitarianism, particularly including as it affects the West, because of course the Houthis' attacks on shipping affect the West. And equally, the Iranian regime's determination to develop a nuclear weapons capability is also going to affect the West. Yet the Biden administration's been soft peddling on that as well. I'm pleased to say that President Trump's taken a different approach. He's returned to his maximum pressure campaign of sanctions against Iran, and has also threatened, if Iran doesn't agree to dismantle its own nuclear arsenal or its development of nuclear weapons, if it doesn't agree to do that, then he will unleash Israel onto Iran and give Israel all the support it needs to carry out military operations against the Iranian nuclear program, which I think is something that should happen, and it should happen sooner rather than later. The time is ripe now for that. And that will be a demonstration, I think, to not only to the Iranian terrorist regime, but also to dictators elsewhere in the Middle East as to what they can expect if they continue to threaten not only Israel, but the West.
And Richard, just finally on Gaza, Donald Trump has threatened several times to rain down hell on Gaza unless all the hostages are finally out. We've also had the Gaza Trump Towers Gold Coast resort plan, which is maybe you put your name down for a flat share up there on one of the Trump Towers overlooking the Mediterranean. But where are we with Hamas, and at what point will the threat of unleashing hell take place? Will we see the Israelis move in? Will we see the Americans giving them the green light to move in?
Well, with the massive fee I receive for appearing on Outsiders at this time, I can afford several towers.
Of course, you can top penthouse, Gaza Towers. That's it. The Kemp suite.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But to be serious, I think we're receiving mixed messages now about the continuation of the ceasefire, which has been going on for several weeks. And the aim of the ceasefire was not to preserve Hamas life, of course, because that's something that needs to be annihilated, but was to pause operations in order to get back as many hostages as possible. And it looks like Hamas are quite concerned about the threats from Trump to enable Israel and to give the green light to Israel, because they've now said at least they're going to release some more hostages, and that shows, to my mind, that shows fear in their heads. But however this works out, however this latest sort of series of negotiations work out, I think come the time that the Israeli government decides they have secured the release of as many hostages as possible, and of course there are still some alive and some dead in Gaza, once that time arrives, I believe that the Israelis will then resume operations in Gaza. They'll go back to the fight and finish off Hamas, which has got to happen. And I believe if that does happen, then the new US administration will be fully supportive of them, as the previous one wasn't. The previous Biden administration tried to restrain Israel. I think the Trump administration, once the decision is taken to return to the fight, will encourage Israel to fight on to the end, because, of course, there can be no resolution to this situation before really two main things happen. First of all, Hamas is destroyed in Gaza, and contrary to what people say about you can't destroy an ideology, Hamas can be destroyed in Gaza and should be. And secondly, that the head of the octopus, which includes all of the numerous proxies around the region, is chopped off. In other words, the regime in Tehran.
Richard Kemp, Colonel Richard Kemp, always great to chat to you. Thanks so much. We'll let you go to sleep now, and we'll speak to you again here on Outsiders. Thanks so much. Richard Kemp, Colonel Richard Kemp there in Israel.